And then, of course, old West Ham man Danny Dyer was on Drive later on. Now, you had a tilt at him earlier on. What was it you said yesterday? It was kind of lost in me in the middle of it all yesterday.
It was the other day. And, sometimes I sit in here and I forget that I've got this microphone in front of me. There's a million people listening to it. And I just say these sort of things that are moderately indiscreet. But I had said a while ago that Danny Dyer, which is a matter of fact, was playing for a team in the Soccer Sixes that was under my auspice. And he turned up with Tamer Hassan. He wasn't a very... And I've been a bit unfair because he isn't the worst footballer I've ever seen. Nick Moran has that moniker. And if you've seen Boris Johnson playing the Soccer Sixes, it's a really unfair thing for me to have said.
He's the worst everything.
He's the worst footballer that God ever put a breath into. But the fact of the matter is it's rattled Danny's cage.
Oh, it didn't have.
So he's had a little swipe back at me.
Well, yeah, so Danny Dyer, mindful of this, was on Drive, and he had a pop back.
Well, it's interesting with Simon because a couple of people sent me this thing. He's dug me out. I don't know why. I don't know. I don't know what's the matter with him.
What happened? Explain to everyone what happened.
Someone sent me this thing where he said I'm the worst footballer that's God ever put breath into or something. And then he went on to tell this story about how I played for his team once in Soccer Six, and I thought, well, I've never met you, so that's interesting. And then he went on to call me the poor man's Ray Winston, which I'll take. So I'm a bit confused with him, really, because he says some stuff I quite agree with, but I don't like snob's hand, and he's the worst kind of snob because he forgot where he came from. And on that note, I shall probably leave it there, because
I'm scared now.
Well, no. It's interesting. It's interesting. He had a little rant about me, and a few people.
Why is he picking on you?
I don't know, Don. He's an angry man, isn't he? He's an angry man with long words.
He puts lemon juice in his hair. Did you know that?
Does he really?
Yeah. I haven't told you that.
Does he really?
Yeah, I haven't told you that. That's off the record, Dan.
Yeah, he loves a little hanky in his pocket. He's one of them nuts, isn't he? It's a shame, really, because I love the man. It's a shame that he's a very, very angry man.
An angry man.
So you've got to give context to this, right? Because it's out of context. And I realise that perhaps Danny isn't programmed for questions, but it's out of context. And the context was you brought up who was playing in the Soccer Aid. And then someone brought up the name Danny Dyer in a conversation we were having the other day. I said, he's a useless footballer. No, he's right. It's a really unfair analysis. He isn't the worst footballer I ever saw. But the problem is with me is I hate being called a liar. Right. Now, the fact of the matter is it's an absolute cast iron copper bottom fact. I've just played the message from the guy that runs Soccer Sixes that recounted the story of Danny Dyer to Luke outside.
Yeah.
Him and Tamer, who I very much like, and I didn't at the time, turned up after some grubby little PA with horrible shriveled up £5 notes falling out of their pockets, giving it, we'll be in the team then, shall we? Right? And I was like, no, you won't be in the team. And in fact, you're useless. You can sit on the bench and we'll go down to 5 players. And even then you're not playing.
Yeah.
And he used to come into my restaurant in Mayfair on Warwick Street with a guy called Andy Loveday who made all these films, Rise of the Foot Soldier and those sort of stuff. And I didn't much like him, so I threw him out of the restaurant. And then years later...
You threw Danny Dyer out of your restaurant?
And years later...
What did you do to deserve that?
I just didn't want him wandering around my restaurant with certain people. And years later, someone told me that he'd done this TV show called Britain's Hardest Men or something and put this blonde wig on and gone onto doors going, I'm Simon Jordan, I want to come in. On camera. So there you are. I've compounded the indiscreetness of it all. Yeah. But listen, Danny Dyer, he's a brilliant actor in his own way. I mean, ironically, Howard Pinter, this brilliant playwright who was Danny was his protege, described him as the best actor that he'd ever had. So whilst I poke a little fun at Danny Dyer, and I do think he's a poor man's Ray Winston, but
Kevin Bridges has got his own view on Danny Dyer. Listen, have you forgotten where you came from then? Is that true? You've forgotten your roots?
What? Because I've tried to expand my dictionary, made a few quid, lost a few quid, bought the team that my dad played for that I lived 100 yards away from. I'm South London to my core.
Yeah.
That means I've forgotten where I've come from.
Yeah.
I think Danny's forgotten where he's been.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the Talksport app and on your smart speaker. Talksport.